Okay, in this chapter we are putting in place one of the major building blocks of Hebrew, which is the verb. So there's a lot to cover in this chapter, even though there's only 4 little boxes here. This is going to take a bit of time, as you can see if you've just taken a glance through chapter 6 in Frittata, which starts on page 29. So there's going to be a lot that's going to be brought together here. But so we're going to overview Hebrew verbs. We're going to introduce some terminology we're going to be using throughout the course. Then you'll learn your first Hebrew verb pattern, the cow perfect. We'll run through that a few times. We'll do some practice. We'll also introduce some vocabulary. So the Hebrew verb is the workhorse of the Old Testament. It does a lot of work in terms of the meaning of a passage, and you can guess that already. Just that's what verbs do, but it just seems you're going to spend a lot of your time translating the Old Testament working on verbs and figuring out, well, what's this one doing? Why is it doing it? Just to get a little bit of the significance, and this comes from Robert Alter's book, The Art of Biblical Narrative. A typical Hebrew sentence is very concise. It doesn't like to waste words, and so it'll typically have a verb, and then the subject, and then the direct object, and maybe an indirect object, maybe a qualifier of some sort, but it tends to be pretty sparse so that you can get to what it really wants to pay attention to. So this is the first part of, as you can see, Genesis 38:14. This is the episode with Judah and Tamar. It comes and sort of interrupts the, well, it seems to, but there's a lot of connection. The whole Joseph story, so Joseph goes down into Egypt, and then you get the story of Judah and Tamar. Tamar is his daughter-in-law, and he wrongs her by not providing a husband for her once her husband and who is his son dies. And so this is Tamar hatching a plan. And as I said, normally a Hebrew sentence has one verb, but in this, and you'll just have to trust me in this half verse, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 verbs. Here we have Tamar. This is when she hatches her plan to seduce Judah and act like a prostitute, and so shame him for what he's done to her, which is basically leaving her humiliated and powerless in society. This is when she hatches her plan, and you see that the text is wanting you to see her as a woman of action, that she's somebody who takes the initiative, that instead of just one verb being associated with her, we get these 4 verbs. Now you're not going to learn how to parse these verbs in this lecture, but still, it's getting some of the nuance of it and starting to see how verbs work in the Old Testament is a big leap forward in your interpretive skills and journey as you want to have your study of this language make an impact on your congregation or your ministry or your family. So verbs are big. So with that, let's get into some of the terminology that we're going to talk about as we talk about Hebrew verbs, and we're going to be going over this. We're going to be using this terminology a lot, and so you have a lot of chance to master it, or at least get a good handle on it. The first term for us to talk about is root. So the vast majority of Hebrew words can be boiled down to 3 consonants, triconsonantal root. So here I have the word that we're going to use as sort of our base word for each new verb paradigm. It's the word katal, katal. Now, this is just three consonants, but when you, as things are added onto the front and to the back and vowels are changed in the middle, you get a variety, a whole family of meanings. And the point here is to know that roots are kind of the idea behind that whole cluster of meanings. And so on page 29 you can see, for example, the different, the sort of the relation between the verb zara and then zerah and then mizrah. And so you have a verb there, he sowed, then the noun seed, and then mizrah is sown land. And so you can see the the Zayin Resh Aleph there, in all three words, that's the triconsonantal root. And he has another example of Safar, Sefer, and Mispar. And he counted document number. And again, you've got the Samik, the Pei, and the Resh that are there. That's the root that we're talking about. So most Hebrew words, and there are some exceptions, but the majority of them boil down to this three consonants that kind of is the core of the meaning. And then you can kind of guess. If you know one of the terms in one, in its noun form or its verb form, and you stumble upon it in another, you can normally piece together what it means, although some will surprise you. So our root are these three consonants. And so whenever I ask you, can you tell me the root of that verb? This is what I'm talking about, three consonants in the middle. Obviously, it's not always going to be Kof, Tet, Lamed. It's going to be other things, but that's what we're looking for, the three consonants. So the pattern it's the characteristic elements that are added to a root to make a different verb or a different use of a verb. And so we're going to learn 7 different, I didn't mean paradigms. Sorry, again, there's different terminology in Hebrew depending on what you've studied. Why are you, that's why you're doing that. We're going to study 7 different patterns in this class. Can I change it? And again, these patterns are sort of consistent added elements or characteristics that will shape a verb and changes its meaning. This is what you need to know, is patterns change meaning. And so if I've got this example here, this Kof, Tet, Lamed, the pattern is normally going to affect the vowels underneath here. So let's use the example on page 30. So, and actually I'm going to take it from the, so you've got Zara is the cow pattern, and it's just a basic active he sowed seed. So just sort of a basic active idea, that's one meaning, whereas you put it in another pattern which adds this noon to the front and changes the vowel pointing to get Nizra, then you get it was sown. So it turns it into a passive. This is a difference in meaning between these two. It's between he sowed and it was sown. That means this word has a completely different meaning, different idea. Sometimes it'll change more than that. But so our patterns are going to affect the meaning of this particular root in this particular context. And as I said, patterns are generally going to be related, not always. Sometimes they'll add a prefix to it, but they're generally going to be seen in the vowels underneath the root consonants. Again, the first pattern you're going to learn is the cow pattern. It means light or easy. It accounts for 69% of all verbs in the Hebrew Old Testament. It's very, very common. That's why we're learning it first. The others are going to build off of it. But this pattern affects the meaning of the verb, and we're going to cover the 7 patterns as we go through the course. Now, conjugations affects the use of a verb or a word in a sentence. So it's the difference between not he sowed and it was sown, but it's the difference between he sowed, which would be Sarah, and she sowed, which would, oh, no, I don't want to draw a T, I want the Zion. So here we have Zara. So here we have the same meaning. We're still talking about actively sowing seed, but we're changing the use. which is, did he do it or did she do it? So this affects the use of a verb or a word in the sentence. So patterns are going to change the meaning, either from active or passive or causative. So he caused to sow, or reflective, he sowed himself. Doesn't make sense with that word, but so these are changes in meaning, whereas conjugations, they're going to change the use of a word in a sentence, just who's doing the action. So we're going to learn finite and non-finite conjugations. Finite conjugation and infinitude is limited, right? So finite conjugations are more limited than non-finite conjugations. Now there's a reason this isn't infinite, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Finite conjugations are marked, that is the different vowels underneath, and then what's added to the back and the front, the prefixes and the suffixes, will tell you person, gender, and number. So that makes finite what this particular verb can be referring to. It's only one particular category of person, first person, second person, third person, one particular gender, masculine or feminine, and one particular number. Is it singular or plural? It's very limited, a finite conjugation, and you're going to learn perfect, imperfect, imperative are going to be it's IMP or IMPV. These are the conjugations you're going to learn that are finite. That is, they're marked for person, gender, and number. And then there's non-finite conjugations, which are not marked for all three of these. They might be marked with just gender and number, or not at all, or none. These are conjugations like the participle, which is marked for gender and number, the infinitive absolute, the infinitive construct, which is not marked for any. So we'll break these down as we go, but just to know the difference between a pattern affects the meaning, conjugation is going to affect the use. Okay, and just in general, let's say green is for pattern, blue is for conjugation. In general, the pattern is going to be down here, and the conjugation is going to be in prefixes and suffixes. So we might have something like this. So a pattern is most often expressed in the vowels, the vowel pointing, whereas the conjugation is most often expressed in prefixes and suffixes. But the point, pattern affects meaning, conjugation affects use. And verbs are always going to be in a certain pattern, they're always going to have a certain conjugation. Okay, another term we're going to use is paradigm. Paradigm is a useful chart showing a particular conjugation in a particular pattern. And so page 31, bottom right corner, you have the Cal Perfect Paradigm. So it's this chart that has all the forms of this one conjugation, the perfect conjugation for the particular pattern, the Cal. So that's an example of a paradigm. It's very useful. It gathers everything together in one place. And then this last term is parsing, or to parse, which is the exercise of decoding or translating the various elements of a verb. And so here you can see a parsing chart. It has, Futato uses 7 boxes, I use 8. So the first is the actual verb. So on quizzes and tests and worksheets, I will supply you most often with the verb. Sometimes as we get later in the course, I'll have a Hebrew sentence here and it'll be your job to figure out what are the verbs I need to put in here. But that's for later. Don't worry about that now. But parsing chart will have the verb, and then it'll ask you what's the pattern of this verb, which again affects the meaning. Then it'll ask you, tell me which conjugation this verb is using, and that is the use. Person is the person, gender, and number. They identify the who's doing it. And then the root, and this triconsonantal sort of central meaning, family of meanings is the root. And then I'm going to ask you in things to give me the meaning. So what I'm asking for is put all the previous boxes together and tell me what this verb means. So halach, you learned as a vocab word in lesson 5. In the cal, it's this basic active sense. Perfect is completed action in the past. We'll learn about that in just a moment. Third person is he, she, or they. Masculine is he or they. Singular is he. With this root, gets me this. He walked. So I add that one in. I feel like there was something else I was going to say about this. I don't remember. Yeah, so we're going to be doing these. Parsing, we're going to be doing a lot. Again, because verbs are the workhorse of the Old Testament, a lot of our course is going to be, okay, now we're going to learn this pattern. Or now we're going to learn this conjugation and see how it fits into these patterns, or how it changes and is expressed in different patterns. Or here's a new pattern, and now we're going to look at all its different conjugations. So we'll be doing a lot of this in the rest of the course, and this box will become very familiar to you. So that's just an overview of the Hebrew verb. That's the terms we're going to be using. We're going to be looking for a triconsonantal root. We're going to be breaking down the different patterns that affect the meaning of the verb. Then we're going to be looking at different conjugations. How is this particular meaning being used in this particular sentence? Paradigms are going to be helpful for studying and memorizing how do these different patterns and conjugations show up. And then parsing will be a major part of our work together. Okay, so now we're going to introduce the first pattern and conjugation. So you're going to learn the cal pattern and the perfect conjugation. So cal means light or easy. It's the most common verb pattern in the Old Testament. So when in doubt, choose cal. Like if you're ever called on in Hebrew exegesis and you just don't know what to say, then you got a better than 2/3 chance of being right if you say cal. That doesn't mean you will be right, but there's a good chance. The perfect pattern we're going to see is for completed action in the past or a stative to express a state of being. So here we have the cal perfect paradigm. And I reviewed for you, we learned the vocab for pronouns, and we reviewed it the lesson after, and then last lesson we went over it again, and I said, hey, this is going to be really helpful when we learn our verbs, and you're about to see why. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through this this paradigm. I'm going to go through this column. Then we're going to talk about the accents and how they relate to the pronouns. So I'm going to start at the top and go to the bottom, and notice that the Hebrew paradigms start with the third person, not the first person. So we go third person singular down to first person plural. So here we have katal, katal, katala, katala, So we know that this is vocal because this is not a short vowel, and it's not kametsatu, it's a kamets. Yeah, so this is a vocal shava. Excuse me. So this is katala. This is katalta. Katalta. This is katalt. Katalt. This is katalti. Katalti. This is katalu. Katalu. And we have vocal shava. Kataltem. Kataltem. Katalten. Katalten. And katalnu. Katalnu. Now what exactly are we seeing here? So what this paradigm is showing us is that if you take this example root, this kof tate lamed, and you want to put it, or yeah, let's use this for now. You want to put it in the cal perfect, so the easy, basic, active meaning in completed action in the past. That's what cal perfect will get you. What do? Well, if I want to say put it in referring to a third masculine singular subject, then I add a kamets under the first root consonant and a patak under the second root consonant. Similarly, if I'm talking about a third feminine singular subject who's doing this action, and I've got this root in mind, what do I do with it? Well, I add a kamets under the first, I'm going to add a shava under the second consonant, and then this kamets hey is going to end it. So what we're seeing here is if you swapped out these root consonants, this is the form, the shape that that verbs in this cal pattern, perfect conjugation, this is the form they take in the biblical Hebrew, in the Old Testament. So in a moment down here, you see I've got another example of the cal perfect. I'll show another root and how it shows up in the cal perfect. But for now, this is katal is going to be sort of our example verb for all the new patterns and conjugations we learn. And so we have katala, katalta, katalt, katalti, katalu, kataltem, katalten, katalnu. Okay, and here we have the verb paradigm again, but as I go through this, I want to highlight a few things. I want to highlight the accent, and I want to highlight its similarity with its pronoun, if it does share that. So here we have katal. The accent is on the last. I'm going to do this little caret kind of thing, sideways caret, to show you that the accent is on the last syllable. In the second example here, katala, similarly, you have the last syllable gets the accent, katala. And there's no, they don't bear any resemblance with their pronoun. But here in the second masculine singular, you get katalta, katalta. So here the accent is actually in this center syllable here. And also notice how the tav kamets mirrors the tav kamets of the pronoun. Okay, this is something that students get confused about because the second feminine singular has this tav shava. How do you know the difference? Well, you've already started to learn the difference because you've learned the pronoun. And so the tav kamets goes with a second masculine singular. And John Gowen's chart is really helpful for starting to drill that in. The tav shava, similarly, is the second feminine singular pronoun, and it's also the ending. So we have katalta, katalta, and again, this middle syllable gets the accent in this conjugation of the cal perfect second feminine singular. Katalti, katalti, again, is another place where we have the middle syllable getting the accent. And you have this tav hirek yod. Well, it's related to the hirek yod of the short and long form of the pronoun. And we're just going to see that this hirek yod shows up a lot in terms of this first person referentiality. Katalu, katalu, here the last syllable gets the accent, so you're good to go then. Here we have kataltem, kataltem, so the last syllable gets the accent, but notice there's a faint, not even faint, but familiarity here between the pronoun, the tav segol mem, and we're ending with the tav segol mem. Here we have katalten, katalten, and we had the tav sere nun, which the sere doesn't help us out, but the tav nun does. So you've already begun to learn these endings by learning their pronouns. And our first common plural here, we, this is katalnu, katalnu. So the center syllable gets that accent there. And the nu ending of anachnu, the first common plural pronoun, again shows up here in the first common plural of katal. Now, unfortunately, katal means to kill, so it's not a super fun thing to say over and over again, but I'll read through this again. For memorization, I would recommend speaking it over and over again and writing it. And I think this is helpful in Hebrew to get in the practice of both speaking and writing Hebrew. And you can also do recognition, having written it down and doing flashcards and things like that. But when you learn to speak Hebrew, when you're consistent in it and you're becoming practiced where that's a habit, then you can pick up different rhymings and different word plays that the authors of the Old Testament are doing. So here we have katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti, 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 katalu, katalten, that was kataltem, katalten, katalnu. All right, so this would be, the meaning of this would be he killed, she killed, you killed, feminine. This would be I killed. This would be they killed. So we don't have any differentiation here between male and female, third plural in the Cal Perfect. This would be y'all killed. This would be y'all killed. And I know there's supposed to be an apostrophe in there somewhere, but nobody, I don't know if it's y'all or y'all, but anyway. And this is we killed. So again, what a paradigm is showing us is the vowels that this particular pattern put under things, and any prefixes and suffixes that this particular conjugation puts at the back of things, or before things, or around them. Okay, so to see a further example of this, we're going to go down and we're looking at another verb, zachar. Zachar is to remember. So here is the Cal Perfect paradigm for the root zachar. Okay, so here we have zachar is the third masculine singular Cal Perfect, meaning he remembered. Zachara, zachara is the third feminine singular Cal Perfect from the root zachar, meaning she remembered. Zacharta, zacharta, second masculine singular Cal Perfect from zachar, meaning you remembered. Zachart, zachart, zacharta, second feminine singular, meaning you remembered. Zacharti, zacharti, first common singular, I remembered. Zacharu, 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 third common plural, they remembered. Zechartem, zechartem, second masculine plural, y'all, either all males or a mixed group, remembered. Zecharten, zecharten, second feminine plural, y'all, group of females, remembered, or perhaps a plural of a feminine object, remembered. And zacharnu, zacharnu, first common plural, we remembered. Okay, so here, I probably should have put these side by side, but here we can see a different root, okay, different three root consonants, but you've got this pattern, and this is what the pattern is showing you, of the vowel pointings and the suffixes. In this case, it's all suffixes, so all things added to the end of the word. And so this is what we're seeing. We're seeing if you switch out the consonants, the root, and just plug them into this pattern, then you get this basic active completed action in the past meaning and use of this idea. So if we were to have, for example, Zachar ta in a parsing chart, then I would fill it out by saying this is Cal, perfect, second masculine singular from Zachar, meaning you remembered. That's how I would fill out the chart. I'll do a few more of those. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing what this means to be a pattern, that it's this common characteristics, this pattern, it's in the word, of vowels and suffixes that fill out this Cal perfect paradigm, that what you can change is the triconsonantal root, which puts you in a different family of meaning, but this is the form it'll show up in. Okay, so I've already gotten a little bit to the uses of the Cal perfect. We're going to talk about two here. How is this pattern and conjugation used in the Hebrew text? Well, the first is definite perfect. Now, these aren't exhaustive. These two aren't the only uses. You can later look up different Hebrew grammars. Like, if you really want to get crazy, you can go to Waltke and O'Connor. A more introductory one is Williams' Beginning Hebrew Syntax. I think that's what it's called. But they'll tell you a little bit more about here's all the way the Cal perfect is used. But the most common way is this definite perfect. That is completed action in the past. So Zachar, he remembered. This action is completed. It's done, and it was in the past. Natana, he gave. Or sorry, she gave. Excuse me, she gave. It's a completed action and it's done in the past. It's not ongoing. It wasn't just begun or anything. It wasn't iterative. It didn't go on and on and on and on and on and continue to go back. No. It's completed and it happened in the past. Shematem. Here we have y'all heard. Again, it's completed action. It's done. And it happened in the past. So this definite perfect action, we're going to translate it in English with this completed action in the past idea. Now, what you really want to work on is not just taking this word, for example, natana, and equating it with this English word, but you want to start to equate it with the actual referent. Okay, so you want to picture in your mind, what does it look like that she gave, or something like that, and that experience, that expression, this is what you want to start to associate with it, to allow the Hebrew to define its own relation to the object rather than having to go through English. So this is an advanced skill that you're going to be building on, but even now, start to work on that. So the first use is this definite perfect, completed action in the past. The second use is the stative perfect. It's talking about a state of being. And this is very close to, and the way we will translate it in English is it looks just like an adjective. So this is he is heavy. Well, in English, this is an adjectival phrase. We're describing him. So in English, it's indiscernible from an adjective, but in Hebrew, what we have here is a verb. So it's marked more with more, or for more specificity to the subject. So this is third masculine singular. So this word in English can only, if we're not thinking our Hebrew thoughts, we miss the fact that the way this word is written in Hebrew can only apply to a he or a male object, an it. It's marked for the time, etc., because it's a cal perfect. So it's got more specificity than an adjective in Hebrew, and we'll talk about adjectives in a few chapters. But so for now, these are going to translate for us into adjectival sort of phrases. But the state of perfect describes the state of being. If you're in discourse, if you're quoting somebody's speech, then it's going to be present tense. But if you're in a narrative, it's going to be past tense. So the Lord said to me, "You are heavy. Go on a diet." That's in discourse, and so it's in the present tense. Where if it's in the past, then we'll translate it. If it's in a narrative, so David said to Uriah the Hittite that he was sleepy or something like that. So it's not within the quotation. That's what discourse is. It's within the quotation. Or if it's outside of the quotation, then we're talking about narrative. Okay. So these are the two primary uses. A lot of our translation work in this class is going to be using the definite perfect for this cal perfect use. But we want to be aware of the stative as well. All right, the vocab for you is on page 33, and then after that we'll go through some practice parsing to give you a few more handles on this. Here we have the word beged. Beged. It's a segulate noun, so the accent is on the first syllable here, beged. So it's garment or clothing. This is the word mishpacha. Mishpacha. So here we have a shava. It's preceded by a short vowel, so it's silent. Here we have a dagesh and a begad kafat, but the sound that precedes it is this consonantal sound, mish. And because this is silent, that's why it's a consonantal sound rather than a vowel sound. So because it's preceded by a consonant, it's a weak dagesh, and so it's not doubling, it's just hardening the sound for us. Mishpacha, and again that's clan or family. This is Navi. Navi is a prophet. We saw the movie Avatar. The aliens are called the Navi. This is Na'ar. Na'ar. So the accent is here on the first syllable because it's pretending like it's a segulate noun. It's because we have a guttural here and it changes the vowels. I talked about that. But this is a boy or a youth or an amateur, somebody who's new at something as a na'ar. And you could have na'ara if it's talking about a girl, if you wanted to change the gender specificity and things like that. But na'ar is your vocab word for boy or youth or amateur. Nefesh. Nefesh, segulate noun, means soul or self. It's a feminine noun. So Futato marks that for you, and underneath he's got the plural of this is nefashot, which shows us that it's feminine. But this is an unmarked, so it looks masculine singular, but in fact it's feminine. Olam. Olam is forever or antiquity. Batach is to trust. Katav is to write. So it's pointed here in the cow perfect. We have the kametz patak underneath this 3 root. So this could be a verb that you see in a parsing chart. So this is he trusted. He wrote is this one. Shamar, again, we need to learn to recognize, okay, we got 3 consonants. We got patak, kametz patak pointed under here. This is he guarded, he observed, he watched. And then here we have shafat. Kametz patak in this form is cal perfect, but again, the reason that this is just what we call the lexical form. So if you're looking it up in a lexicon, Brown Driver Briggs, or another, this is the dictionary entry you're going to see. That is the cal perfect 3ms. Is the dictionary entry. So we've got to trust, to write, to guard, to judge. Yeah. All right, let's practice some parsing. So you can pause the video here. You can just follow along, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to read the verb, and then we'll practice going through and parsing it. So this is shafaten. It's a cow pattern. Right now that's really easy because you haven't learned any other patterns. Cow pattern. It's a perfect conjugation. It's really easy because you've only learned 1 conjugation. Now we get into what person, gender, and number is this. So who's the subject? Who is doing the judging, deciding, or punishing? Well, here we have the Tate noon ending, which you recognize from your second feminine plural pronoun, or you've just memorized your paradigm so well that you know that's the second feminine plural. The root, again, I'm looking for the consonants, the 3 consonants for this, that the vowels are added to and the suffix is added to make this particular meaning and use. And then the meaning of this is y'all, so that's our second feminine plural. Judged. It's taking this cal, completed action, perfect in the past. Or cal is basic, active meaning, perfect is completed action in the past. Y'all judged. Katava, it's cal because we don't know any better. It's perfect, we don't have any other way to go. Now I need to figure out what is this suffix. And it's important to also recognize the vowel pointing changes, but the suffixes are going to be what tells you the person, gender, and number. And so this is our 3rd person feminine singular. So the root here is kaf, tav, beit, katav, meaning to write. The cal perfect 3rd feminine singular of this idea is she, right? That's 3rd feminine singular. Wrote, murder she wrote. This is completed action in the past. It's not stative because we couldn't say, well, I guess we could say it is written. But we'd probably say something else. It would probably be in a different form. But most of these you want to go with completed action. Here we have Natan, cal, perfect. It's in a parsing chart, so I know it's got to be a verb of some form. And all I see is this kametz patak, and I know that's the 3rd person masculine singular pointing or form of the cal perfect paradigm. The root is the noon, tav, noon, which is to give, and so this is he gave. Shamanu, because the accent is here. So this is cal, it's perfect. We have this new ending. So that is 1st person common plural, right? Because remember that from our pronoun Anachnu, right? That was our first person common plural we pronoun. And so the root here is shin mem ayin, which is to hear. So we heard. We heard. Next one, zacharu, zacharu, zacharu. It's cow. It's perfect. So when you're looking to kind of decode one of these verbs, you want to try and identify what's a prefix and what's a suffix. So one of the ways to identify is just familiarization with prefixes and suffixes. The other direction to go is say, well, can I at least isolate what are my root consonants? And those are mutually penetrating tasks of figuring out what's a suffix and what's the root consonant. But you know, some people are you know, if you get your vocab down, then this task is going to be easier, and you might fill out this one first and say, okay, at least I know that the root is zayin kaf resh, and so now I need to figure out, okay, I've got this suffix here, the shurek. That's the third common plural suffix for a cow perfect. So that is they, and zachar is remember. So remembered. Here we have achalta, achalta. It's cow. Perfect. So again, we need to figure out what's our root, what's our suffix. We got the tav kametz here, which is related to the second person masculine singular personal pronoun, and sure enough, it's second person masculine singular from the root achal, to eat. You ate me out of house and home. You ate. And here we have kavada, kavada, kavada. So it's cow, perfect. And this is something we would never say, but I had to come up with some stative example for you. So here we have the kametz hey ending, which you recognize is the feminine singular marker for a noun, and so there's some crossover here. So this is third feminine singular from kaved, to be heavy, and so she is heavy. Okay, so that's an example of the whole activity of parsing. Try and silence my phone so it's not bothering you for the last 30 seconds of this video, where we take a verb and then we break it down into its pattern, its conjugation, how is it marked for person, gender, and number, what's the root, and we put all that together into the meaning.